The Forex markets opened like any other day, yet something strange was in the air. Traders were used to watching the big players, currencies like the U.S. dollar, euro, or yen dominating the charts. But as the morning candles began to form, two unexpected currencies started showing signs of life. The Iraqi Dinar and the Vietnamese Dong, long ignored, often dismissed, whispered about only in small circles, were suddenly pushing upward with surprising strength. A few sharp-eyed traders noticed the unusual green candles forming on their screens. At first, many brushed it off as a temporary spike, something that would fade as quickly as it appeared. But then the charts kept climbing. Tick by tick, the numbers edged higher, and what seemed like nothing more than background noise began to demand attention. In one bustling office in Dubai, a young analyst leaned forward, tapping his keyboard as his screen displayed the live Forex chart. His eyes widened. He called out to his colleagues, half disbelieving, half excited, "Look at IQD, it's climbing, and VND too." The room quieted for a moment, then filled with murmurs. Everyone pulled up the same charts, and the buzz became contagious. Candles painted the screen in bold green strokes, and the resistance lines that had stood strong for months were suddenly breaking apart. The analyst could feel his pulse quicken. He remembered reading forums where speculators had spoken about the dinar's potential, the whispers of a revaluation that circulated for years, always dismissed by professionals. Now, watching the chart, he couldn't help but think maybe those whispers were not so far-fetched. Meanwhile, halfway across the world in New York, a seasoned trader sipped his coffee and frowned at his screen. He had built a reputation for ignoring hype, relying only on hard data and market fundamentals. Yet here he was, staring at IQD and VND surging in tandem. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. He quickly checked newswires, searching for an explanation, an announcement, a central bank policy shift, or perhaps geopolitical news. But there was nothing that could justify such a synchronized bullish movement. His instincts screamed caution, but another voice whispered, "What if this is the start of something bigger?" He hesitated, his finger hovering over the buy button, the old conflict between discipline and gut feeling raging inside him. Social media was already ablaze. Screenshots of the live charts flooded trading groups and Telegram channels. Some laughed, calling it a pump, while others swore it was proof of long-awaited changes in global currency balances. A young investor in London who had bought IQD years ago as part of a speculative bet was scrolling through his phone when he noticed the chatter. At first, he didn't believe it, but when he logged into his trading account, his heart skipped a beat. The balance was climbing steadily, almost doubling in front of his eyes. He rubbed his eyes, thinking it must be a glitch, but the numbers kept rising. "No way," he whispered to himself, his mind racing. For years, his friends had mocked him for holding onto such a worthless currency. Now, as the bullish candles kept stacking, it felt like vindication. Back in the trading floors of Hong Kong, brokers were fielding calls non-stop. Clients who never cared about small exotic currencies were suddenly demanding updates. "Buy IQD now," one shouted over the phone, while another asked nervously if it was too late to get in. The brokers scrambled, overwhelmed by the sudden frenzy. One veteran broker leaned back in his chair and chuckled softly. "The world loves a surprise," he said to no one in particular, "and the market delivers them when you least expect." The momentum was undeniable. Technical indicators across different platforms began signaling bullish trends. The relative strength index pushed upward, confirming growing momentum. Moving averages curved higher, creating crossovers that analysts couldn't ignore. Every green candle was like fuel thrown into a fire, drawing more eyes, more traders, and more money into the trend. Feeling of electricity filled the air, not just in trading floors, but also in living rooms of ordinary people who had dabbled in Forex, people who suddenly felt like they were part of something. Historic, in a cafe in Istanbul, two friends stared at their laptops, watching the live chart together. One leaned forward, whispering as if afraid to break the spell, "It's real. Look at this, it's actually real." His friend shook his head in disbelief, remembering all the nights they had joked about the dinar revaluation myth. Now it seemed less like a myth and more like reality unfolding. Passers-by glanced at their glowing screens, curious but unaware of the storm that was spreading through global financial circles. The hum of speculation grew louder. Was this the long-awaited breakout? Was there secret news brewing behind the scenes? Or was it just the power of market psychology, traders feeding off each other's fear of missing out? No one could answer with certainty, but the truth was undeniable. The live charts were screaming bullish momentum, and the whole world was watching. Traders who had dismissed IQD and VND as irrelevant were forced to confront the reality blinking before them. For some, it was a chance to ride a wave they never thought possible. For others, it was a moment of regret watching opportunity slip away while their hesitation held them back. The day was still young, but already it felt like history was being written in real time. IQD and VND, two currencies overshadowed for decades, were suddenly at the center of the world's attention. Every tick of the chart carried weight, every candlestick told a story, and every trader watching felt the same burning question rise in their chest. Was this just the beginning, or the fleeting echo of something too good to last? The hours passed, and the early spark that had lit the screens in Dubai, New York, London, and Hong Kong was now spreading like wildfire across the globe. The bullish candles on the IQD and VND charts did not retreat. They pressed upward with a steady rhythm, as if announcing their determination to be noticed. Traders who had hesitated at first were now beginning to panic. Momentum was growing stronger, and with every tick upward, the fear of missing out clawed at them. On trading forums, heated debates broke out, some shouting that this was nothing more than a speculative bubble, others declaring it the long-awaited turning point for these currencies. The noise was deafening, but through the chaos, one fact was undeniable. The charts were alive with power, and they refused to slow down. In New York, the seasoned analyst who had been skeptical all morning found himself staring at the screen with clenched teeth. The indicators he trusted were all flashing green now. The moving averages had formed a golden cross, a rare signal he could not easily ignore. The RSI was high, yet instead of showing weakness, it seemed to feed on itself, pushing even higher as new buyers poured into the market. He had spent years dismissing IQD and VND as irrelevant currencies, trapped in the margins of global finance. Now he was watching them rewrite his assumptions in real time. With a sigh, he gave in, pressing the buy button at last. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of knowing he was stepping into something that could either be the trade of a lifetime or a costly trap. Meanwhile, in London, the young trader who had been holding IQD for years was overwhelmed by the pace of events. His phone buzzed endlessly with messages from friends who had once mocked him for investing in junk currencies. Now those same voices were begging him for advice. Should we buy now? Is it too late? What do you know that we don't? He didn't have the answers, but what he did know was enough. His account balance was skyrocketing. His modest investment was turning into something life, changing before his eyes. He leaned back, shaking his head in disbelief. A rush of pride filled his chest, but so did an unfamiliar pressure. For the first time, he felt the weight of being ahead of the crowd, of being right when everyone else had doubted him. Across Asia, the story was no different. In Singapore, a financial newsroom was in chaos. Anchors scrambled to piece together a breaking news segment, yet no official statement could explain what was happening. Central banks were silent, policymakers gave no clues, and yet the charts told their own story, one more powerful than any press release. On live television, an anchor asked an economist what was driving the surge. The economist hesitated, fumbling through technical jargon, but the truth was clear in his eyes. He didn't know. This uncertainty only fueled the drama further. Traders watching the segment rushed to buy, convinced that if experts had no explanation, it must mean something historic was brewing behind the curtain. In a crowded office in Frankfurt, junior traders huddled around a single monitor. Their supervisor had dismissed IQD and VND earlier that morning, calling them irrelevant distractions. But now, as the bullish trend intensified, the juniors exchanged nervous glances. One whispered, "If this keeps going, we'll be fools for ignoring it." Another leaned forward and began making small trades with his own account, hiding his actions from the supervisor. He felt reckless but also exhilarated. Every tick upward confirmed his gamble, and he couldn't stop himself from grinning. By the afternoon, the frenzy had reached retail traders in every corner of the globe. On mobile apps, thousands of small investors piled into IQD and VND, their trades adding fuel to the fire. Social media platforms flooded with screenshots of profits, hashtags about the currencies trended, and YouTube live streams popped up, showing amateur analysts cheering as the charts climbed higher. The buzz reached ordinary people who had never traded before. Some rushed to open trading accounts, convinced they had stumbled upon a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The scene resembled a digital gold rush with the live Forex chart as its glittering mine. And yet, beneath the excitement, tension simmered. Veteran traders knew that such explosive moves carried danger. A few cautious voices tried to warn others, reminding them that markets could reverse as quickly as they rose. But their warnings were drowned out by the roar of optimism. In cafes, in homes, in offices, people stared at glowing screens with eyes wide, caught between fear and hope. Every green candle seemed to silence doubts. Every breakout above resistance silenced the skeptics. The bullish wave was no longer just a market event. It was becoming a psychological storm that swept across continents. In Tokyo, an old trader who had lived through countless market manias sat quietly in his small office. He watched the charts without speaking, remembering the dot-com boom, the Bitcoin surge, and countless other frenzies that had come and gone. Yet as he studied the IQD and VND charts, something about this felt different. These were not popular currencies with massive followings. They were outsiders, forgotten, overlooked. For them to rise so powerfully meant something unusual was happening, something that could not be dismissed as mere hype. He adjusted his glasses and leaned closer, whispering softly, "There's a story behind this move, and the world hasn't heard it yet." As the day wore on, phones rang in trading houses, emails poured into brokerages, and forums overflowed with speculation. Rumors swirled secret deals between governments, oil-backed changes, hidden reforms in Vietnam's economy, whispers of Iraq's financial restructuring. No one could confirm any of it, but the speculation itself became part of the fuel driving the trend. Traders didn't need proof, they needed belief, and belief was stronger than any technical indicator. By the time the sun began to set in different time zones, the charts still showed green. IQD and VND were not retreating. They were climbing steadily, defying gravity and logic. Traders who had laughed in the morning were silent now, some nursing regret, others scrambling to enter late. Those who had taken the risk early sat in stunned silence, watching their accounts swell. The bullish wave had transformed from a whisper into a roar, shaking the very foundation of how people viewed these currencies. And yet, behind all the noise and excitement, one question lingered in the minds of everyone watching. Was this just the beginning of a historic revaluation, or the calm before a reversal that would crush the hopeful? The markets had no answers, only the relentless rhythm of charts climbing higher, tick by tick, candle by candle, as the world held its breath. As the final hours of the trading day unfolded, the atmosphere was unlike anything seen in years. The bullish climb of IQD and VND had stretched from dawn to dusk, and the energy surrounding the live Forex charts was electric. Screens glowed in brokerage houses, home offices, and cafes, each one showing the same breathtaking image, green candles marching upward without hesitation. Traders who had doubted at first were now fully immersed, their earlier skepticism drowned by the undeniable reality of numbers that refused to fall. Conversations everywhere carried the same tone, excitement laced with disbelief, as if everyone knew they were witnessing a moment that could end up in history books. In New York, the seasoned analyst who had reluctantly joined the trend earlier sat at his desk, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. His account balance had grown in a way he hadn't experienced in decades of trading. He should have felt victorious, but instead he felt unsettled. He knew markets were merciless. What they gave, they could take away in an instant. Still, staring at the steady climb, he couldn't bring himself to exit. "Ride the wave," he muttered under his breath, trying to reassure himself. Yet deep down, he wondered whether he was watching the birth of a revolution in currency markets or just the crest of a fleeting mania. In London, the young trader who had invested years ago found himself pacing his apartment. His phone buzzed nonstop with calls and messages. Friends demanded to know whether they should jump in. Strangers online hailed him as a genius for believing in the dinar and dong long before the world cared. He couldn't process it all. His balance showed life, changing numbers now, far beyond anything he had imagined when he first bought those currencies on a hunch. He walked to the window, staring at the glowing city skyline, his chest heavy with the realization that his life might never be the same again. Yet, with every passing second, another question gnawed at him. Should he sell now and secure his fortune, or hold on and risk everything for the chance of even greater gains? In Dubai, the young analyst who first spotted the surge that morning was now surrounded by colleagues. The trading floor buzzed with frantic energy, phones ringing endlessly as clients from across the world demanded updates and guidance. He felt a strange pride knowing he had been among the first to sound the alarm. Yet pride was mixed with fear. He knew how fragile trends could be. One sudden reversal, one piece of negative news, and everything could collapse like a house of cards. Still, as he watched the candles climb with mechanical persistence, he couldn't deny the sense of awe building inside him. The charts seemed alive, as though they were telling a story of redemption for two forgotten currencies. On social media, the frenzy had exploded into a global phenomenon. Hashtags trended in multiple languages, memes spread faster than facts, and live streams attracted thousands of viewers who stared in disbelief as charts updated in real time. For ordinary people, this wasn't just about trading anymore. It felt like being part of a collective discovery. Posts with phrases like "history in the making" and "IQD and VND to the moon" flooded timelines, pulling in curious onlookers who had never even heard of these currencies before. In Hanoi, a small group of young entrepreneurs gathered around a laptop in a quiet coffee shop. They watched their national currency, the dong, climb on global Forex charts, their faces glowing with pride. "For once, the world is watching us," one said softly, his voice trembling with emotion. For them, it wasn't just about profits. It was about recognition, about their country stepping onto a stage it had long been denied. The cafe buzzed with laughter and hopeful chatter, as if the green candles represented not just numbers, but the dreams of a nation finding its place in the world. Meanwhile, in Baghdad, a retired banker sat quietly in his home, watching the dinar surge with tears in his eyes. He had lived through years of instability, through times when the dinar had been a symbol of loss and despair. Now, as he watched it climb, he felt something he hadn't in decades' hope. He whispered to himself that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a brighter chapter for his people. As the evening deepened, the narrative around the bullish trend shifted. It was no longer just about speculation or short-term gains. It became a story of transformation. The forgotten currencies of Iraq and Vietnam were suddenly commanding the world's attention, breaking through decades of doubt and derision. Each candle on the chart seemed to tell a story of resilience, of nations and people long underestimated, now proving their strength in the most unlikely arena. But beneath the triumph, unease simmered. Veteran traders knew well the danger of euphoria. In chat rooms, a few voices pleaded for caution, reminding others that markets often punished greed. Yet those warnings were drowned out by the overwhelming chorus of excitement. The momentum felt unstoppable, and in that moment, no one wanted to believe in limits. Everyone wanted to be part of the ride, no matter how reckless it seemed. In Frankfurt, the junior trader who had secretly bought into the trend was now glowing with excitement. His modest account had grown in ways he had never experienced, yet he dared not tell his supervisor, who still dismissed the surge as meaningless noise. He knew he was riding a dangerous edge, but the thrill was intoxicating. For the first time in his career, he felt like he had stepped ahead of the so-called experts, and it gave him a rush of pride that no lecture or textbook could ever provide. As midnight approached in different time zones, the charts still stood tall, their green towers unbroken. Across the world, people who had once ignored the Forex market now stayed awake, glued to their screens, watching history unfold in real time. The bullish climb of IQD and VND had become more than just a financial event. It was a collective experience, a global spectacle. From traders in skyscrapers to dreamers in small cafes, from seasoned veterans to complete novices, everyone shared the same burning question: what happens next? The story was no longer confined to charts and numbers. It was alive in the hearts of millions. For some, it was greed, for others, hope, and for many, it was simply the thrill of witnessing the impossible become possible. And as the final candles of the day closed in green, the world realized that the surge of IQD and VND was not just a financial trend. It was a phenomenon, one that blurred the line between speculation and destiny, leaving behind a feeling that nothing in the market or in life would ever be the same again.